All right, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee here for Tuesday, October 11th. Alderman Tom Duane is ill today, so he won't be here, so we will have a quorum with myself, Joe Moore, Alderman Mark Stoyer, and Alderman Tom Slottick. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed. Can we get approval of the minutes?
Move approval.
A second.
I've got a approval on the minutes, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed. Item number 4 is consideration with possible action on the request by the General Water Utility Manager to approve a resolution authorizing execution of the Department of Natural Resources principal for given financial assistance agreement.
Move approval.
Second.
You gotta watch me put your commas.
Second for
Otherwise,
discussion.
Execution of the Department of Natural Resources principal. I was like,
I'll
yes,
second
we got a
that.
motion and a second for discussion. Yes, Alderman
Okay.
Stoyer.
Well, I think I'll just second it unless there are some questions.
No discussion?
I'll be-
All right,
I'll
all
be
in
good.
favor?
Aye.
And none opposed. Move on to, really wanted to make her talk, but.
Yeah,
I like it better, less is more.
yeah. We'll get you.
Item number 5 is consideration with possible action on the request by the Transit Director to transfer $370,528 from Transit Operating Fund, Fund 208, to the Transit Capital Fund, Fund 207. This amount is the 20% local share for capital purchases, such as buses and equipment that is required from the city in order to utilize all the federal and state capital grant dollars.
I'm pretty sure Patty
not here.
Hewitts did not think that she'd be on at 4:32, so I'll take this one for her.
Great,
But
thank
what
you.
she's requesting is, Transit Operations has a levy that is shared between state, federal, and all the surrounding communities. And they have turned money back into that fund. That's where we levy, that's where those dollars go back. And what she's requesting is some of the remaining funds that are in that, there to supply dollars for her purchase of the buses. And I'm thinking that this is for, is it for 4 buses, Diana? And this would be our local share. So it's really simply a transfer from the operating fund to her capital budget fund. And this would be in lieu of borrowing money to purchase those buses.
Question.
Yes, Alderman Slottick?
Why do we not budget for capital?
Why do we not budget for capital? Well, we had a conversation just a few moments ago with the mayor, and, because of our levy limits and our expenditure restraint, it's very hard to get capital dollars into our regular operating budget because of the constraints that we have at the state level. They have applied expenditure restraint to the city as well as levy limits, so it's very hard to incorporate capital in with just operating needs and people being on the street to do the work that the services
So
that we
as it
provide.
applies to the transit capital budget, of which there is a line, is 0 for this year.
Mhm.
Well, we knew we were gonna have to spend some money on capital, right?
Yes, I think this has been in the works for a period of time. I don't know if it started at the end, beginning of this year. I'm not sure exactly when it was realized what that need would be.
So the transit department has a surplus at the end of the year.
Right.
And so they started this year with, as I thought I saw, they started this year with 2.34 million in cash and investments.
Mhm. Is that, are you looking at a balance sheet?
Pardon me?
What are you looking at, a balance sheet?
I
Or
pulled
just
that
the
out
memo?
of,
Oh,
I pulled
okay.
that out of the annual report.
Okay.
And so I'm just trying to understand how this operates. So
Sure.
is this the process every year that they basically create an operations budget that is going to have a big enough surplus to fund their capital needs?
They don't necessarily know how much, the Department of Revenue gives them, I know it's Department of Transportation, Wisconsin Department of Transportation, gives them the budget parameters, including what they should be budgeting for fuel. And to optimize that, they use that value in order to to maximize our federal dollars, and then our state dollars gets matched by the federal dollars. If they run a surplus, such as they have the last couple of years, and primarily driven by fuel, by what we're not spending in fuel is actually The federal dollars we do not have to send back to the, do we have to send back the federal dollars and the state dollars? Or
No,
just the
federal
state
dollars, only state dollars. they said.
Right, so we have to send back the state dollars, and the reason why that cash balance is as high as it is because that's as of December 31st on that day. That is prior to the audit actually occurring. What happens then, the auditors come in, they audit the books, and they return any dollars that are remaining that are surplus to transit. So the city of Green Bay gets our portion, Ashwaubenon gets a portion, all the surrounding communities, and then the state of Wisconsin gets their portion. But that's well after the year has ended, so that's why the cash balance would be as high as it is as of December 31st.
Okay, now the transfer that they're asking for now, $370,000, is that approximately the same amount of transfer that we did last year?
Can you give the annual finance report?
Yeah, I think last year we had a very similar number.
I want
Because
to
each
say
year,
that is the
they
true
do try to
statement.
buy about the same number of buses each year to keep their fleet
Right.
rolling stock.
And I believe Patty would say, you know, they did purchase quite a few buses when they had the ARA funds in '07, '08. And so what has happened is that they bought a pile of buses, and now what they're trying to do is smooth out the replacement cycle. And I think Diana's right that they're doing like 4 buses a year. And the transfer, last year they did not transfer any funds out of, into capital. It may have been 2 years ago. Actually, you know what, they borrowed money for some buses, and this would be the next set of buses that would be, we get, I think, in 2017. And I'm just gonna, I am looking for their fund balance. So at the end of 2015, their fund balance, I think, was well over $700,000 that they had in their operating fund, and that's really what has,
You mean their surplus at the end of 2015?
accumulated surpluses at the end of prior years has grown, and I want to say it's 700, but it's kind of close to 900.
Well, the accumulated surplus would be that 2.3 million number, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily, because cash does not necessarily reflect your fund balance. Does not necessarily mean that that's, part of the $2.3 million was $900,000 of just ongoing working capital that they,
Okay.
that they have. They have, actually, their fund balance is $1.3 million at the end of 2015, so she would be using a portion of this fund balance. And she does try to plan these things out, instead of going out and levying more money. If you knew that you had some surpluses from your operations, she'd rather use this than go out and borrow money to pay for those buses.
Mhm.
So they did have $1.3 million. They tentatively have used like, I don't know, $300,000 for their 2000, to supplement their 2016 levy of $1.3 million. So I think, so there would still be dollars left in this fund, even if they didn't return any money in 2016. They still had money in this fund to allow them to use for, that they could use for capital, but it would be at your pleasure.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Alderman Fleur?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Dawn, I was going to ask, okay, they're transferring from 208 to 207, so the operating account, if you will. What is that amount offhand?
$1.3 million is the
1.3.
fund balance in the transit operations, and they have about 100 and,
I guess the question I'm going to get at is this adversely affecting that budget in any way?
no. I think that she's using her surpluses to help her with her capital needs instead of coming back to the city to
Right.
ask to borrow the money.
I understood that.
She's using her own, the money that was levied, and with favorable pricing for fuel has helped her, and she has $189,000 in her capital, so she does need some additional dollars in her capital funds to make that purchase.
And when you said that about 4 buses a year, that's what we're looking at? Is
Something like
that an
I can
average?
get you the exact number.
Is that averages per year?
I can get you the exact number. and
Okay,
get
that would
back
be
to you.
nice to know,
Sure.
because I know that depending on some of these buses and, you know, what the prices are on some of these, you know, it'd be nice to
Usually
know
about
that.
350,000 to 400,000 piece.
Per, okay. All right, and are we doing anything with some of the older buses as far as refurbishing them and keeping them going, or, I don't
I'm
know,
sure
I'd
that
have
they're
to ask
trying to
her.
maximize their
Right.
fleet. I mean, that's something that's an ongoing thing,
Right.
so.
Okay, that's all I have right now.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion from the committee? We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed. Report of the purchasing manager, the request approval to purchase a new server for storage of security camera video to Management Concepts, Inc. for $22,238. Yes, sir.
This server is replacing some outdated servers. We'll have increased capacity to accommodate upgrades. It supports the citywide surveillance cameras, which are existing, drive cams, which will be replaced this year, or later this year, early next year, in the squad cars. And possibly, we're installing new cameras in the interview rooms at the police department. This is a planned purchase. We had 3 bidders, and we're recommending the award to the low bidder, which is Management Concepts for $22,237.75.
Move approval.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And none opposed. Great. Item number 7, consideration of possible action on the request by myself, Alderman Moore, to dedicate additional excess stadium tax of $163,298.52 to the revolving loan fund in an effort to spur small business growth through this resource.
So,
I can speak to it quickly if you like, and
otherwise, just one of the resolutions that was passed when we dedicated the $1 million towards economic development and $2.8 million, we also had a tail end of that $2.8 million in any excess that could be collected over the next years would go towards capital improvements. So I think we would just need to go back to that resolution and rewrite it if this is what your desire would be. So we kind of have already earmarked
Sure.
those dollars for the capital improvements.
okay. Well, I'll take a discussion from the committee here, but I'll just say what my reasoning behind this was, it's an opportunity to take, more than $150,000 and just put the money to work for us. I'd see that, there's an opportunity to increase tax revenue if businesses can use these to make improvements on their buildings. Encourages growth, obviously. You may even see relocation. Gives us a competitive edge for small businesses that may be moving to a community to know that these low-interest revolving loan is there to help with a build-out. It won't reduce the balance. There has to be some caveats to here that this can be an unforgivable loan and that the interest rate would have to, at a minimum, cover the administrative costs of administering loans. And then there's also the opportunity for some possible job growth, if it's adding reception or adding staff, to a small business as well. I think it's worth a discussion. I think that it's money, we knew there was some coming, we didn't know how much, and I think that this is a pretty significant amount. And I think that it falls in line with spurring economic growth, and I think that it would just be a good program for the city to be involved in. I'm happy to take any comments, Alderman Spire.
I appreciate your comments on that, Joe. I'd like to hear, I don't know if Alder Dorf would like to mention anything on this, because I know that you're on the committee that's looking at this excise tax. And I know, was there any discussion at all from your group talking about this extra money that came in, or is that something that?
I mean, yeah, but that's probably
Right,
what
they
has
just
been in
said-
my update on number 9.
No, I'm just
So
gonna ask her.
how do you want to handle that?
And I think Joe just mentioned too that we have 1 million in place. This is extra, so it's not, per
Okay.
se, economic development. Tom?
I guess, one, I'd like to reinforce what Dawn just pointed out, that technically, we did commit this money with the resolution that we passed. So we technically added any additional funds to the infrastructure monies.
Right.
But beyond that, at this point, I really would not want to commit this money to something different. I think we may have to go back and revisit some things we already did, because I'm given to understand that we're going to be facing in the next few weeks a very difficult budget. And so, particularly on the heels of what we did in July, where we chose not to devote even $1 of that money to property tax relief. I think with the budget we're facing, I just can't at this point support excess money being dedicated to something else, because I think we may find that we really wish we had this money to devote to levy relief.
My thoughts are that, like I said, I appreciate your candor in bringing this up, but I agree with Alderman Slotnick as well, with the budget coming up the way it is. That's not to say that this could not happen. I think we could discuss it further, but I think until that resolution is dealt with, according to how he brought that up and Dawn brought up, I'd feel comfortable going along with Alderman Slotnick on this.
Yep, I'm actually fine with that as well. I know I'm really leery about just the additional money going to capital improvements, because you said infrastructure, you said capital improvements, and they can be 100% completely different things. So I think that, like Alderman Slotnick said, we may have to go back and look at some of the allocation of those funds to begin with. This is always something we can move down the road if we chose to do that. So I would be fine with a motion to take this and receive it and place it on
I
file.
will make that motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to receive and place on file. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, none opposed. Item number 8, consideration with possible action on the request by the police chief to accept two Homeland Security grants, the HS Alert Hostage Rescue Course 2016 and the HS Alert Negotiator Training Courses. Chief Smith.
So just as a caveat, included in your packet are the two letters from the state of Wisconsin. This is following our new grant policy that will bring these things forward. So with that, Chief, I don't know if you want to speak to these specific items?
Sure thing.
Not really our interest in turning money away for training purposes, but I just thought if you had something to mention
I
about
didn't think it
them.
would be too big of a fight to get this past you, but we are going to be hosting this for the regional SWAT teams that we have in the area, two separate, one in February, one in April, which is going to be at Fox Valley, and the other in February, which is going to be here at our headquarters. No cost to us except for the staff, of course, and we're going to bring other agencies in to train them as well.
Move approval.
I'll second
And a
that.
motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. Congratulations on your new hires. Item number 9, update by Alderperson Dorf on the excess sales tax subcommittee progress and timeline.
Okay.
Yes, Alderperson Dorf.
Thank
What do
you.
you got for us?
Well, we actually had a very long meeting. Started at 1 and until at like 4:30. And where we got stuck at the end was with some of the projects that potentially could come out of the other 2.8 million, such as the parks projects. And so there was quite a discussion on some money for the Red Smith neighborhood bathrooms. And on the other hand, of asking how will that be decided? Because we as a committee don't have any idea who will decide the other 2.8 million. Our parks as capital improvements, or because it would cost the taxpayers money in the future. If we use some of this money, then it wouldn't. So that is where we finally just stopped at 4:30. We're going to meet again Thursday, but we need a little bit of direction if that's possible.
Is it possible to put economic impact numbers together? I mean, bathrooms at Red Smith isn't going to be an economic impact.
We don't think it is
you
going
know?
to be an economic impact. We don't know that it belonged under there. There was just a couple of them like that. It might belong more, or a few of them might belong, and it still they might not get funded through the other 2.8, but is there even going to be consideration given to those kinds of things?
So
Yes, maybe you can remember the other ones.
So one of the things that I feel was questions from, Alderman Dorf or Ms. Hanson about these applications. And I said, you know what, you're not going to go wrong if you turn one in. So that's how we accumulated 27. One of the other, some of the other projects included light improvement at Whitney Park, the outdoor event center. I know that there's 5 or
Was there a
6.
Bay Beach one or not?
No, because we were thinking.
Wildlife
that would go-
Sanctuary?
No,
No,
that we thought that
that-
would go into the.
Okay.
capital
one.
improvements piece. So yeah, that's where the confusion is. They're not, or we're not sure whether or not we should be using economic development for these projects. Oh, the Green Isle.
Oh, the green something.
Yeah.
It's like a lighthouse, is that the
Yeah.
light, the lights? Do you know what that is, the green
I think the
something?
grasslands out at
The
the
grass,
marina.
yes.
The
Yeah.
grass area out at the marina.
Yeah, and so, you know, first of all, there were, what, $4.7 million worth of requests, and we have $1 million.
Right.
So even as we looked, we got through every single application, which I thought was amazing. And, you know, each one of them, we looked at the different priorities that were in the application grant. There were 7 different things for each application. And did they meet the criteria? Didn't they? And are they in the city of Green Bay? That was a big one. And, you know, if they weren't, it wasn't in the city of Green Bay, we're not really considering it. Because that's said right in the very beginning, has to be in the city of Green Bay. So we did get through every single one. And I won't say we rated them, but we did have some kind of a feel for if they met some, most. No one met all. None of them met all, I don't think.
Like with the matrix, you mean?
Yeah,
comparing them with
it just
other
didn't.
matrix?
It didn't. So it was more of we were in need of a lot of discussion on each thing. And so, yes.
Well, thanks Alder for all the work you've been doing on this, and I guess the way I look at, you know, the whole thing with economic development, and we've talked about that before, is that, you know, if the monies can be brought forward to them, it's something that they could leverage to bring more money in, more value to the
That was one
community.
thing.
And like you said, I know with bathrooms, for example, at Red Smith, you know, we would save on taxes in a sense, you know, so indirectly there might be a benefit, but I'm looking at it more from a proactive standpoint, that, you know, what monies that does this corporate or group bring to the table that they can turn around and generate more money, you know, for the city.
But there perhaps could be an alderman on the committee that really feels forceful about this money going to that, and not, or if there was some indication that there's possibility for some of these applications to be considered.
Well, we're putting our faith in you folks too, in a sense, because, aren't we?
It'll all get
You know,
discussed on the floor
I mean, it
regardless.
will get discussed anyhow, but
Is there an interim meeting? I mean, we do this part, then is there going to be?
It'll come.
Comes to
to-
I was
finance,
hoping,
and then
Yes,
finance.
yes.
council.
But
yeah.
at the finance meeting, will we also be talking about the other 2.8? So that there can be a ban.
The only agenda item should be the what's done in the
Economic.
subcommittee.
Okay, so when will the
Yeah.
other 2.8?
As capital projects come up, and Alderman Slotnick had a budget meeting earlier. Some of those projects that may normally be budgeted would probably, I'm assuming.
So
they
you
will come over
wouldn't
there and-
consider the application ones? Or if you didn't even know about them?
Sure, Alderman Slotnick.
Yeah, now, we basically delegated to this committee to parcel out the $1 million that we set aside for economic development. And I know people wanted application processes and a scoring system for all that, but we are at the date that the council specified for us to get a presentation of the recommendations from the committee. And it sounds like the committee has not achieved that at this point.
Right, we have a tentative list, but we want
We
to
do.
come circle back and we want to review them again. And the next meeting is this Thursday at 2 o'clock.
Thursday at 2.
We changed that to the 11th at the council meeting.
You did, and it was
So-
supposed to be today, and it might have been today, but it didn't turn out to be. So it's going to be.
How many have you narrowed it down to?
We know
From the 27?
exactly where we want to give the money, except for the last 62.
16,000-ish, I think, or 6,200, is that what it is?
Well, no, because of the 50,000
Oh.
thing. So like 62,500.
See, I mean, there's
500.
some items like the
So-
Whitney Park Townhouse, or the Whitney Park lighting.
Mhm.
I mean, Alderman Nennig, wasn't that like one of our last meetings in parks when we accepted a donation of the Whitney Park lighting? He's just looking to be reimbursed, or?
Yeah, there was
No, it's like,
discussion on
it's a
that.
match. It's a match, so they've raised funds, and I think I think they're requesting $12,000 from this, and they have 17,000, it's some kind of a match that they would do.
At that meeting, it was a donation. It was like, we are going to put lighting in with your approval, and we approved them put lighting in our park.
Okay.
So that's just kind of interesting to me, I guess, but.
Mr. Chairman, I have a suggestion, and that suggestion is use your best judgment and parcel it out.
Yeah,
Now, we delegated this to the committee, let the committee bring forward its recommendations. I, for one, am gonna support whatever the committee brings forward, and let's get this behind us.
We'll
Or
try.
That's a good
about-
comment. That's-
We'll be talking about this in
Yep.
January.
It is a
I
good
know,
comment.
I know, and I really believe we will finish it within an hour on Thursday.
Thursday. Well, now with that being said, with the time frame you were bringing up, Tom, is there something that,
Well, what the
will we need a special meeting to discuss that, or can we still fit it in the time frame? Do you think, that we have?
The
set?
council, we had originally said October 25th for recommendations from the subcommittee, and the council changed that to today. But then it says final recommendations presented and distribution thereafter, November 1st. So if at our next committee meeting, we're going to get a report and get the recommendations.
Will that be enough
I
time?
think- I think
Will that
we'll be
enough time?
okay.
Otherwise, I could say that, if you made your decisions on Thursday, we could bring those findings to our committee before our next meeting and somehow either a special meeting or just get that in.
I
Can
think
we
this
do
has
that?
to go before the council on the 1st,
Okay.
based on what the council outlined in the, at the
Well, I'm just
July
looking at
meeting.
expediting it.
I
So-
think, Alderslot, if we wanted to come to consensus, in the end, we may just have to vote.
Mhm.
And is it the will of the council that the people on the committee that are not elected alders vote? That was discussed quite at length. The-
So
The
there's three
council-
alders and there's 3 citizens, correct?
There's
Three
three
alders
alders
and
and
three department heads.
three
And
department
I mean,
heads.
at the end of the day, I won't feel strongly one way or another, to be honest. I mean, I will certainly
just
support,
want
to-
I
I'm
will
sure
certainly
that-
support what the council is,
I mean, we delegated that to a subcommittee. If
Okay.
the subcommittee wants to conduct its business with every member voting, that doesn't bother me in the least.
Right.
So that's legal. There's nothing,
Right.
You're under
because-
your own
because
rules on
You're
how
gonna
you
bring a
want- you're a
recommendation to
subcommittee.
us, we're gonna forward a recommendation to the council.
all right. In the end, I will work toward consensus. If I can't get consensus, then we will make a decision. We'll have it done Thursday.
Okay?
Yeah, it only needs to be a majority.
Okay? All
Well,
right.
thanks, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Okay.
effort.
Well, do we need to
That
do-
one, I think we would take a receive and place on file.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to receive and place on file the report. All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed. Item number 10 is the report by the Finance Director on the 2017 budget parameters.
Thank you. In your packet, I did highlight some of the budget constraints. I think I've vocalized it, but now I really wanted to put it down on paper. We've had no changes as far as funding and shared revenue expenditure restraint or municipal fees. However, we have seen a decline in some state aids, including computer aids and help me out, municipal service, how much they pay us towards the buildings, state buildings that are here, and then transportation aids, connecting highways as well as general transportation aids. So we've seen some decline there. And then our recycling grant that was cut in 2016 was restored in 2016. We did get a few extra dollars there. And fully-
83,000?
I'm sorry,
That was right over 80,000, is that right? Right around there?
60? I think it's 60.
I think it was supposed to be 83.
I can get that number for you. And then we are under 2 constraints. One is the expenditure restraint. The mill rate for those that want to participate need to be over $5. We're at $8.85, so we do. And the calculation is based off CPI as well as 60% of net new. So between CPI running at a rolling average of 0.88% and net new construction coming in at 0.91 or 60% of that is 0.55, that really only gives us about 143 as our limit, or it'll limit us to about $1.2 million increase on the expense side of our budget. So purely on the expense side of the budget.
May I ask a question about that? So
Yep.
it says we can spend 1.2 or 1.3 more, that's the increment, versus what? Obviously, we don't know the 2016 spending, so what is it, what's the base?
Budget over budget. It looks, what this Department of Revenue does is they look at how much you levied, how much your expenses are for 2016,
Okay.
and then what you levied for like all your equipment, and we can spend $1.2 million more than that in 2017.
More than what we budgeted for this year.
Right, not actuals, it's budget
Got it.
over budget.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We have consistently qualified for the expenditure restraint, and just to reiterate, it does focus on expenses only. If you recall, last year, our restraint was under $700,000, so that was quite a challenge. And it is all or nothing. If we go over by $10, we lose $1 million. And this year, our qualifying value is $1.7 million is what they would give us for expenditure restraint. And then our secondary levy is the levy limit, and that is $1,477,000. That is a hard number. We cannot go over our levy limit of $1,477,000 unless we receive unless we go out for referendum. Of course, at this time, it is not feasible for us to do that. And even using the $1,1477,000 would require 3/4 of the council's approval, because a part of that, about $300,000, relates to unused levy capacity from 2016's budget. So if we do go up to $1,477,000, we do need 3/4. So just to just how this could play out, we could still qualify in the expenditure restraint, and our expenses could be under the $1.2 million that they tell us, but our levy limit could be $277,000, in theory more, and still be underneath the levy limit. Let's just say, we lost revenue, a state aid, it came in at $200,000. Well, if we end up filling that in with levy, that means that we're going to be increasing our levy by that. So it would still allow us to go up to $1,477,000. So that's how we can still qualify under both programs. But of course, the expense side being restrained for us more so than the levy limit.
I had a question.
You got it.
Two questions, actually. First, where will we see the added unfilled positions from the 2015 surplus? Colin, we did that. Where is that going to be in the budget? Where are we going to see that line item? And do you remember what that dollar amount was?
Yes, I do.
Question.
$200,000 was the value, Alderman Moore, that you actually put in to
Okay.
use, and it's going to be a revenue. It's going to be applied surplus, because really you're using fund balance to fill that gap.
Right.
So we have that already factored into our 2017 budget.
I thought we weren't going to use that as applied surplus because we wanted it to actually have an effect on the mill rate, which is why we decided to do it in this way.
Because the dollars have been deposited into the fund balance, I guess. I'll have to take a look at that and think through that a little bit more, but I do right now, just so I don't lose it, I have it in applied surplus.
Okay.
Because really, you're using money left over from a prior year.
Right.
You're intentionally not, your revenues will always, if everything holds true, and you're gonna be $200,000 short on your revenue side, and that's where that gap would be filled.
Okay.
Whereas vacant positions are really vacant positions. You have a rolling stock of positions open in the city that you have salary dollars, but the people aren't there to actually fill those positions.
In my
So that's
defense
a
of these
little bit
questions, that's what you suggested.
different. Hey, don't worry, I have it mental notes myself.
Okay, and then the other is, we looking at any type of a surplus for 2015 with, or 2016 here with a couple months to go?
I don't think so.
It'll be pretty tight.
We're gonna be very tight. We are not as, at this time last year, I was comfortable to say we're gonna have, I think we're gonna have at least $1 million. We ended up with more, but this year I can't tell you that. I think it's gonna be very tight. I'm watching
Well,
it
Director
very
Grenier's
closely.
here, what can we pull from you?
That's where I'm put. You guys going anyway.
Yes, Alderman Slotnick.
Yes, I have just one last question, Dawn. I'm looking at the memo you gave us on this. The very final line says the levy limit would be around 1.137 million
Right,
or 1.477 with unused levy capacity of prior years.
right.
And then levying 1.477 would require 3/4 approval of the council.
Right.
Now, again,
That's by
those numbers represent increases over this year's budget,
Over this year's levy.
over this year's levy.
Right. So the state, and then the state statute requires us to have a 3/4 vote if you do plan on using unused levy capacity from a prior year. That's part of the levy.
Okay, so that gets to my question. So does that mean if we were levying over 1.137, somewhere between there, and the hard cap of 1.477. Anywhere in between there, we need a 3/4 vote.
I will check on that. There's, I think one level might be majority, then I think it goes up to 2/3, and then I think it's 3/4. And 3/4 is at the 1,477,000. So I will have to come back and get you that answer.
Would you do that, please?
You bet.
Thank you very much. Nothing else.
Alderman Steuer, anything else?
No, I'm fine for now.
Okay, except for the motion, I'm sorry, yes, Alderman Nettie?
What if I just ask a question? This thing about carrying, using unused levy capacity, do they only allow you to do that for the prior year, or do you go back? Or does-
They actually give you the value. It's already pre-filled in, the form that I have to fill out is already pre-filled in of what they would allow us to carry forward. The state of Wisconsin gave that to us
But
already.
it's just from 1 year?
Yep.
Does it accumulate? So if we don't use it this year, then we don't have it to carry over
Into the
next
next
year.
year. Right. You don't have like, it's prior year levy, and they're the ones that actually calculate it, and they get, it's already a pre-filled out form. So that's like, I want to say it's like $360,000. What's the difference between 1,477 and 1,136?
340.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, the motion to receive and place on file.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to receive and place on file. No other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed. And item number 11, the report by the finance director.
Well, I have been working on budget, and Diane and I will continue to work on budget. So that's my report now. We are very active in the clerk's office, and I have sent out an email to all of my team that says, all hands on deck, November 8th. So we're gonna need some major firepower, because we can open up ballots. Chris Teskey is predicting we could have over 10,000 ballots that we're gonna do a central count here. We'll have 3 machines. We'll have it very, of course, you know, Chris is gonna be very organized. She's gonna have duties for everyone, but we'll have one person opening, one person reporting, one person scanning in, so we will need bodies. So my team on November 8th will be fielding calls. We have that already established, so it's a pretty busy time. It will be a busy time, and I know Lynn Bolin has offered up that maybe some of her group may want to pop down and help us from time to time. So any help would certainly be wonderful.
What's going on November 8th?
Yeah, what's up with that?
Yeah.
And just to, when you're talking about dates, November 1st is our joint personnel finance committee meeting, and then our common council meeting that takes up the budget will be on Monday, November 7th.
And we'll have the books by when?
We're
Roughly?
opening next Tuesday.
All right, just so we
We're
know.
working, it'll be, if it's not that day, it'll be the very next day.
Need some good reading material.
So we will,
I think
we are
there's a
working
s-
diligently towards that end.
What is the statute, 14 days prior?
I have to, my drop dead date to get my document to the Press Gazette is Wednesday, next Wednesday.
Okay.
So it'll be 16 days before the public hearing.
15 days. Okay, great.
Move to receive and place on file.
Second.
Motion and second to receive and place on file the director's report. All in favor?
Aye. Motion to
Opposed?
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed. All right, thank you.
We have like 10